So, what we're going to do today is look at persuasive writing, and we're going to try and get that under our belts because that's what the GCSE asks us to do. And we want to be able to write a persuasive piece, or to actually persuade people to our point of view as well. So, we're going to look at animal testing as a disaster. One piece on animal testing that was discussed whether it's a disaster, and then another piece that's on the side of animal testing. This one's by Jeremy Byrne. And I'll just read it out loud to you, and we'll just point out some key things. Thousands of people have been injured or killed by drugs that were found to be safe for other species. So there you've got facts, haven't you? And statistics. Animal testing is a disaster, according to Jeremy Byrne I think it's in The Independent, not sure actually. What do you feel is more important, the life of your child or the life of a few rats? So there's your rhetorical question, direct address. Such stark contrast are common currency in the heavily polarised debate about experiments on animals. On the one side, the misguided sentimentality of the animal rights campaigners, and on the other side, the tireless pursuit of health, human happiness and health by the researchers. So you've got some emotive language there too, misguided sentimentality. And the tireless pursuit of human happiness. It sounds like he's on the side of the researchers for looking for human happiness. But since those wide-eyed activists have put animal rights somewhere on the election agenda, you may be interested to know there is a totally hard-headed and rational case to be made for saying that animal experimentation has been a scientific and medical disaster. So the word medical disaster, very emotive and very powerful language there, trying to convince us that actually it's a disaster. That far from saving lives, it has caused injury and death to thousands. That time and time again, it has led both researchers and legislators into a blind alley. So legislators, people who make the law, and a blind alley is obviously a metaphor. They haven't literally gone up a blind alley. But surely you cry. We need animal experiments to discover how safe new drugs are before we can give them to humans. Again, direct address. Are you really crying that? But, you know, that's what they're saying. But entertaining. Well, the combination of fenfluramine and dexfenfluramine, touted as the answer to a dieter's prayer. So basically, if you took those two drugs, you'd be able to lose weight. Touted as the answer to a dieter's prayer a few years ago, was extensively tested on animals and found to be very safe. So they gave it to lots and lots of humans. Unfortunately, it caused heart valve abnormalities in humans, which is rather fatal, I would imagine. Or how about the arthritis drug Oprin? Tests on monkeys found no problems, but it killed 61 people before it was withdrawn. So there's your figures. 61's a lot of people. And as for having to choose between rats and your child, Silert, given to children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, was fine for animals but caused liver failure in 13 children. So again, more facts and figures there. And quite grim, actually. So the problem is not a new one. In fact, it is blindingly obvious. There's emotive language. In fact, it is blindingly obvious. Animals are not the same as humans, so drugs that affect them in one way may well affect us differently. Now, this is usually presented as a solvable problem by researchers. We can get an idea of the mechanism from animals and then fine-tune with humans, they say. But it doesn't really work like that. Species, even those that seem closely related, may function quite differently at a molecular level, and there is no way of predicting what the differences will be. Rats and mice, for instance, look pretty alike to us. But when it comes to something as basic as whether a chemical causes cancer or not, the results may be totally contradictory. Out of 392 chemicals tested for carcinogenic effects at the American National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, 96 were positive in the rat and negative in the mouse, or vice versa. So which of those are harmful to humans? The Institute can't say. So there we are, you've got lots of facts there. And you've also got experts, the American National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, that we think, maybe is very impressive and we believe. And carcinogenic means cancerous, basically. For 30 years, they fed high doses of a range of new chemicals to animals to discover if they cause cancer or other damage. The results are recorded in blue books that take up 10 foot of shelving in the institute. But ask how many of the substances might produce tumours in humans at normal levels, and no one really knows. So that's not very helpful, is it? So what about the ones that didn't harm rodents? How many of them might harm humans? They don't know that either. So lots of use of questioning there. The lack of predictable differences between animals and human reactions is something that has bedeviled AIDS research. AIDS is a high-profile disease with a lot of research money available, so it surely makes sense to ignore ethical objections and use chimpanzees. Bedeviled AIDS research means dogged AIDS research or hindered AIDS research. So surely it makes use to use chimpanzees. It is surely precisely because their genome, that's their DNA, is identical to ours, give or take a few percentage points, that they should yield more accurate results than rodents. Well, no, actually, out of approximately 100 chimps infected with HIV, which is the precursor or the first thing you get before you get full-blown AIDS, infected with HIV over a 10-year period, only 2 have become sick. So clearly they have got a very different immune system to humans. So only 2 have become sick with AIDS. Chimp vaccine trials have proved unreliable too because they don't show the antibody or cell-mediated response to HIV that humans do. Animal experimentation has played only a small role in developing drug treatment to the greatest plague of our time. Again, that's very emotive language, the greatest plague of our time. Is it the greatest plague of our time? I don't know. I think malaria is pretty bad, and you know, cancer is pretty bad as well. So I'm not sure if you can. I suppose you're not. I suppose plague is maybe something you catch. And the list could go on. There are drugs that have been held back because they cause dangerous reaction in animals, such as beta blockers and Valium, they're sort of drugs, but then turned out to be safe for humans. Legislation or laws to halt the use of asbestos was held up for years because it didn't cause cancer in animals, while the carcinogen benzene continued to be used long after clinicians were worried because it didn't cause leukemia in mice. So, you've got here basically saying that asbestos was held up for years, so it didn't cause cancer in animals. Well, asbestos is this flame retardant substance we used to have in roofs and in ceilings and in schools to stop fires. If it broke out, it held back fires. But it turned out the dust was causing cancer, and so but it took years because it didn't actually cause cancer in animals. So all the tests came back clear, and the carcinogen or the cancer-causing substance benzene continued to use long after clinicians were worried because it didn't cause leukemia in mice. So because it didn't cause a leukemia, which is a kind of cancer in mice, they didn't bother to research it any further, it appears, in this article. You could probably Google it and find out more, but it doesn't sound that using animals is a very good indicator of whether it's safe or not, does it? All these examples and many more have been written up in specialist journals, but until last year they had been scattered. Then a man called Ray Craig, an American medical doctor who specialised in the highly technical field of anaesthesia, that's someone who puts you to sleep for an operation, anaesthetic, collected them in a book called Sacred Cows and Golden Geese. So he's obviously an expert, isn't he? He gave a talk in London about it last night. So was this scientific rational contribution to the debate about animal experiments warmly welcomed, so medical research could be improved? Supporters of animal experiments are always calling for more public discussion and education, but of course not, it was ignored. So this is a sort of article that's trying to get you to think about animal experimentation and whether it's a rational, logical thing to do. And if you say warmly welcome, there's a nice bit of alliteration there as well, isn't it? And emotive language. Jeremy Byrne is editor of the monthly newsletter Medicine Today, and he writes on www.medicinetoday.co.uk. So that's the first one. And if you notice, it's got facts, expert quotes, direct address, statistics, imagery, rhetorical questions. The rule of, has it got the rule of 3? We'll have a little look at that. For 30 years, got 3 examples there, haven't you, actually? For 30 years, they fed high dust as a range of no, not that one. Let's have a look. Opron, Silert, and fen flurum. That's 3 examples, isn't it? That's a rule of 3. So a rule of 3 is quite useful. Either 3 uses of adjectives, or 3 examples, or repetition of 3. So alliteration, warmly welcomed. Emotive language, lots and lots of emotive language in there. Wide-eyed activists, totally hard-headed, blindingly obvious. It's a one-sided argument, actually, this particularly, isn't it? I think, actually, you've got expert quotes, you've got direct address, you've got statistics, you've got imagery, you've got rhetorical questions. So if you look at my bit of paper here, you've got facts, expert quotes, direct address, statistics, imagery, and rhetorical questions. Write those down for your mind map. And you've got the rule of 3, alliteration, emotive language, and only one side. And if you want to just hook out examples to use in your mind map, that would be good. I'm going to ask you to do a mind map, basically. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Scientists declare their support for animal tests. Experimental enables medical breakthroughs and saves lives, says declaration by 500 eminent researchers. More than 500 leading UK scientists and doctors have pledged their support for animal testing in medical research, but acknowledge that where possible, such experiments should be replaced by methods that do not use animals. The scientists have signed a declaration reaffirming that animals are required in order to achieve advances in medical research that enable people throughout the world to enjoy a better quality of life. That's a quote. Launching the new declaration, RDS Executive Director Simon Festing said, "We are delighted to have gathered over 500 signatures from top UK academic scientists and doctors in less than 1 month. It shows the strength and depth of support for humane animal research in this country." Unquote. The new move echoes a similar declaration in 1990, which went on to gather more than 1,000 signatures. Groups opposed to vivisection, which is animal testing, criticised the new statement, saying it showed no progress had been made towards replacing animals in scientific research in 15 years. Signed by 3 Nobel Prize winners and 190 Fellows of the Royal Society, the new declaration states that a small but vital part of medical research involves animals. It says researchers should gain the medical and scientific benefits that animal experiments can provide, while pointing out that they should make every effort to safeguard animal welfare and minimise suffering. Wherever possible, the statement continues, so this is a reported speech, animal experiments must be replaced by methods that do not use them, and the number of animals in research must be reduced. It adds, "We wish to see an open and responsible debate about the use of animals. This can be difficult in the face of animal rights extremism. We encourage institutions to provide clear information." Unquote. Nancy Rothwell, obviously an expert, Vice President for Research at the University of Manchester and Chairman of RDS, said, quote, "It is vitally important that the research community sends the message that animal research is crucial for medical progress, that it is conducted humanely, and that we work within strict guidelines." So you've got facts, expert quotes, we haven't got direct address in this. We've got a picture which helps to persuade us, doesn't it? And it hasn't really got rhetorical questions. It's using a slightly different technique in this, in that, it's trying to, it's reporting how scientists are in favour of it, and it's using the amount of scientists, I suppose, but it's not using all the rhetorical devices like rhetorical questions, emotive language. We've got a bit of emotive language in the rule of 3. It's written quite blandly, quite boldly. One might imagine, actually, that this particular person is not trying to persuade us that animal testing is a good idea, perhaps. So it's more complex, isn't it? Anyway, I'll carry on reading. Colin Blakemore, Chief Executive of the Medical Research Council and a target of animal rights extremists, said, quote, "I was involved in the original declaration 15 years ago. Quote, it's as important now as it was then to show that scientists and doctors are fully aware of the importance of animal research to science and medicine. Of course, animals must be cared for properly and never used unless absolutely necessary. This is how we do research, and it would be illegal to do it any other way," unquote. Adolphe Sansolini, Chief Executive of the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection, which is the abolition of animal testing, said, quote, "We are concerned that in 15 years doctors and scientists still appear committed to the ethical, unethical and potentially dangerous use of animals for medical research. We did have high hopes with the Freedom of Information Act coming into force in January that experimentation would finally become more open, but this was not to be the case. All the public gets to see are short summaries of licenses written by the scientists themselves." And so this is an article by The Guardian, and it's got both points of view, actually, but it's using lots and lots of quotes from experts here to sway us, isn't it? But it isn't really using all the other rhetorical devices that the other one's using. Okay. And so I want you to also go on and to do, I've given you, there's an animal aid booklet that you can download online for animal aid. But I've actually handed it out to my class. I want you to do page 37, resource 18A, and page 38, resource 18B, which looks at summarising the stories and unpicking certain aspects of the stories. The other one, 37, looks at how it's written and how effectively persuasive articles and speeches often contain lists of three and contrasting pairs, and it goes on to talk about the three examples the journalist gives of drugs that were safe, which I talked about in the first article, and so you can fill that in as well. In the second paragraph, the author has used the same number as in the bio. And why is it effective to repeat the word? Well, obviously it's effective to repeat the word because it highlights and emphasises and exaggerates. The journalist appealed directly to the reader in paragraph 3. How has he done this and what is the effect? So he addresses us, doesn't he? And the effect is to get us involved with the debate. Where is it? Paragraph 3. But surely we need animal experiments to discover how safe new drugs are. Yeah, so basically it's effective because it pulls us onto his side or her side, and the effect is, the crying as well. You cry, it is emotional, isn't it? Persuasive speech and art often lists of three, and we talked about that. Fill that in. Journalists make choices about their writing to create the greatest impact. Look again at your table and decide why the writer has put this list in this particular order. Yeah, and you may want to answer that yourself. Something to do with the victims probably, and the effect it has on the reader. So this is an article by The Guardian, read by 25 to 44 affluent professionals. Imagine you have to give similar views to those expressed in the report, but in a 100-word article for your school magazine. Use the following steps to success. Start by writing the main point that you wish to convey, get across. List the 3 reasons why animal experimentation is wrong. Decide on a headline which will appeal to your audience. Write down attention-grabbing opening sentence. Use your 3 reasons to write 3 short paragraphs. Look again at your main point and use it to write the conclusion to your article. So basically, you use this report to write a 100-word article for your school magazine using the following steps to succeed. And the next 38 is... both the articles about animal experimentation have a message for the reader, but one is much stronger and easier to identify than the other. The writer of Article 1 is definitely against the use of animal experimentation, whereas the writer of Article 2 has distanced himself slightly from the debate because it's supposed to be a report of the... signatories, isn't it, of that article. Look again at Article 1 and pick out 3 reasons why Jeremy Byrne claims it's pointless to experiment on animals. So if you can do that, the 3 reasons. Explain what each of the following extracts from Article 2 suggest about the writer's attitudes towards animal testing. The first one has been done for you. More than 500 leading UK specialists and doctors have pledged their support for animal testing in medical research, but acknowledge that where possible such experiments should be replaced by methods that do not use animals. The writer refers to leading UK scientists and doctors, so he's not actually giving his own opinions. He refers to scientists and doctors as leading, which makes them seem important. The word pledge seems to suggest that doctors and scientists are committed to the statement, but the argument is tempered by the phrase but acknowledge that, hinting at the feeling that not everything is currently right about what they actually do. And so if you want to answer the rest of those boxes, yeah, hand them all in. Okay, and I look forward to seeing your work. So, I mean, basically, I want you to write 100-word piece in favour of anti-animal testing, and then to do those worksheets. Actually, no, I want you to do a 200-word piece, not 100. Okay, thank you.